This is Jeff with the HODL Report. Wanted to talk a little bit about disruption and disruption within the financial industry. So I've been giving a lot of thought to this, and actually yesterday I was at the car dealership trying to get a new car, and I don't know if you guys have had this experience. I'm sure you have been, but it took about 4 or 5 hours in the dealership, and that's after understanding and already knowing exactly which car we wanted. And the antiquated way, and this is one of the larger Buick GMC dealers in the area, and we've had the same SUV 2 years in a row. Same dealership that actually handled my truck when I got it, and the last time it just seemed more seamless. But I dealt with the person on the internet side, and I'll tell you what, I'm just mentioning this story because I saw the difficulty in which they're trying to piecemeal together information on the vehicle, information on the insurance, information on the new vehicle, information on the old vehicle, and the whole process is just so bogged down. And then you look at healthcare, and you really look at what it takes to have to transfer records from one doctor to the other, having your records even readily available, to be able to move. I mean, readily available to you as an individual. Those records typically aren't available and easily accessible. So when we talk about disruption, and disruption within the industries, when it comes to blockchain technology, we're talking about disruption in its entirety, across the entire spectrum of our economy. And right now, obviously, many of us have been following and passionately following the disruption that's occurring within cross-border payments, and that's really a big one, right? So this is not just a disruption domestically. This isn't disruption in a retail environment. This is disruption in the global economy, the way money is transacted all over the world, how money is moved, how money is handled, how values are assessed, how exchange rates can then be assessed. And this is really a huge movement to making significant change again within the economy. And obviously there's going to be people that are opposed and are going to consistently want to push back against change. So the same types of people that at the retail level are going to push back for change, because this is just how they've always done it. This is how cars have always been sold. This is how healthcare has always been done. So there are large groups of people that are going to be resistant to making any form of changes. Banks are resistant to making changes. The Fed is resistant to making any form of change. And so I talked about in my last video, I talked about HR 7356. There was a bipartisan bill being proposed by 2 congressmen. That is a significant disruption in the way things are being done, in terms of how the government responds to and reacts to digital assets, and really investment in general. But making this as a change, right, as a disruption, meaning that again we have disruptions occurring, and there is resistance. The Fed is definitely going to be resistant to any form of change right now. And it's interesting because I was reading through one of the comments to one of my videos. It's kind of this long ongoing chat, and his comment was that banks are not going to start using a coin or a token or a digital asset that is controlled and somehow in the hands of private individuals. It wasn't exactly on that exactly what the statement wasn't exactly like that, but that was really the outcome of my understanding of what his statement was, that banks are not going to use a coin or digital asset that's controlled, let's say, by a private entity. And that argument is flawed in many ways, because it was as pertaining to XRP as one of the reasons why XRP isn't necessarily going to be picked up by banks and utilized by banks in the cross-border payments. And the reason why that argument is flawed is because the Fed is an organization and is not a government organization. It's really comprised of private individuals that control and manipulate the exchange rates and the financials of our country for their own gain, for their own outcome. And we saw just recently, there's many commentators that have come out that the Fed doesn't know what they're doing when it comes to adjusting and changing the interest rates that are going to really impact the outcome of our current economic status and our current economic state. So this is an organization that is controlling the direction right now, the up or down of our economy. And actually the Fed recently made a statement in one article or one interview. One of their representatives came out and said that they're done holding up the stock market and they're done supporting that. So that to me shows that in some way, again, the Fed has been directly manipulating and controlling the market to their own benefit, to their own outcome. So it brings us back to disruption, and disruption within the banking industry, disruption within the cross-border payment sector. And we really have to think, again, this comes back to those that are resistant to making the changes, because this is how they've always done it. SWIFT, an organization that has been around since the early 70s, and this is just how things have always been done. And they've been able to control and manipulate how people are doing cross-border payments, because essentially for all these years they've had a monopoly over this space for all these years. And now we have new organizations, new companies that are coming into this space really to disrupt. So Ripple obviously is the number one right now in this space that is causing disruption. And once they do go live with X Rapid, it'll be even a further disruption, because as it stands right now with the X current software, yes, it's better than the way Swift does things. It's better than the way Swift GPI handles things. But the true disruption is when they fully enact X Rapid, meaning that the Ripple customers begin using X Rapid, which will then directly utilize the native currency, the native digital asset XRP. And this is a disruption. Disruptive technologies, positive disruptive technologies, technologies that make significant change to the status quo in a positive way. So when we talk about disruption, not negative disruption, protesters out in the streets to protest insanity, but we're talking about positive disruption. Microsoft disrupting, Amazon a disruptor, Google was a disruptor, Apple with their technology a disruptor. There's multiple examples of disruptors within the economy, and we see what their outcomes are. So it's really mind-boggling right now as we look at this space and we look at what the potential can be. Now getting back to how I started, and really the disruption within the retail space, disruption within the automotive market, disruption within healthcare. There are multiple ways that space is going to see the disruption through blockchain that will positively change and positively improve that space to the betterment of all people. And this is really significant, and I think this is really important, an important conversation that everybody has, because it's disruptive change that needs to happen at a rapid pace. It needs to happen really now. It's not something that people want to wait 5 years or 10 years for. And this is the response, the reaction, I think, that we're seeing, and the excitement within this space, and the way at which the large organizations and we see some of the central banks have really taken note, and they're really taking this whole disruptive technology seriously, although we do see a lot of media FUD that is spread across the board. We see that Rubini character, an economics professor out of NYU, constantly trying to prove himself right, because he has his own theory on how things are. But you know what? He's one of those that is resistant to change. He understands how the economy works from the fiat perspective, and he is resistant to the disruptive changes. He would be the same individual that would be resistant to the disruptive nature of an Amazon. And I bet if we look back, I'm sure he was one of those that spoke out against Amazon or mocked Jeff Bezos in the early years, stating that there's no way he could sell books online and take over the book market. And how many people like this Rubini character were resistant to the disruptive nature of the Amazon website and the Amazon way of transacting retail, starting with used books. And the statements were, there's no way you can take on a Goliath like Borders or Barnes & Noble. And where is Borders today? How about Barnes & Noble? How about retail in general? How about Sears? How about Kmart? How about most of the retail outlet stores? How many of the electronic stores? How about Sports Authority? Where did all these large big box stores go? It's been disrupted. The technology's changed, things change. We've now moved in a completely different direction as far as our economics, as far as the market. So next on the chopping block right now is disruptive change on money flow. And why shouldn't that change? Why should we have to stay with the status quo on how information is transacted, stored, or kept? There's no reason we need to stay with the status quo on how information is stored or kept or moved. And again, this could be, whether or not this is your healthcare data, this could be data on your vehicle that you want to sell, data on a vehicle that you want to buy, this your own healthcare information. To me, these are some of the things that directly impact you. Real estate, ways you invest in real estate, ways you buy real estate. If you've ever bought a house recently or a property recently, you'll know that it's also a very bogged down process that becomes extremely, extremely difficult to go through, and it's definitely not an entertaining process. And just in general, getting credit, having individuals that, when you have to apply for credit, going through that process, and the way your credit scores are kept on three different organizations, and they're not always in sync, and they're trying to keep your data, and the data is not always accurate. But again, disruptors. So that's the theme of today. That's really some of my thoughts for this morning that I wanted to get out as I was out here walking early. So I definitely look forward to seeing you on my next video. I'm doing more investigative research on the HR 7356. I should be able to report back at least by New Year's with some additional information on the token taxonomy bill and act. So hopefully I'll have that sooner than later. I look forward to seeing you on my next video. Till then, keep on hodling your crypto.